This wouldn't be much of a survival guide if I didn't have a chapter about this simple but important facet of survival: finding food. Now, if you're somehow just finding out about the Wasteland now, first of all, I'm so sorry. I know it kind of sucks right now, but we're trying to fix it. Slowly. It's not gonna be so easy as just pick a few apples off a tree like it was in your stable or whatever. That option isn't gone completely. There's a lot of wild food still around. It's just going to be a lot harder to find. And it's going to be a lot harder to find wild plants that aren't so mutated they aren't edible anymore. Sometimes your tummy gets the rumblies that you need to satisfy, so this chapter should be able to give you a few tips about where to look. In the old days, there were a lot more farms and a lot less radiation to keep those crops from growing, so food really wasn't much of a problem. These days though, the ponies who do farm only have so much they can grow. Even then, you can't entertain the idea of setting up a farm until you have a structured settlement where you can plant and protect a field of crops. However, old farms are a good place to start. While a lot of farmland got bombed during the war, there are a lot of areas on the edges of farmland that have usually become somewhat fertile again in the centuries since then. See, over time, groundwater will collect radiation and move it around. So while 1,000 acres of wheat might have gotten mostly burned up by megaspells, enough stalks possibly survive that you'll be able to find wild wheat on one side of the plot of land. That's because in general, groundwater moves in one direction towards a river or lake or low point. So whatever wheat is uphill will still get some water, but it will run down and collect radiation in a lake or river. Probably one good thing to mention is you don't want to just go swimming around in lakes or rivers, although occasionally that effect is reversed. There are some plants that have become basically cool plants where they really love radiation. Sometimes the rivers in those areas might actually be very clean because those plants will soak up the radiation like a filter and let the clean water flow downhill. So, if you're lucky enough to find fresh water like that, you should probably start bottling and selling it because you'll make a lot of money. Anyway, finding food in the old days, it was called hunter-gathering because you had to hunt for it and then gather it and then bring it back to your cave. As hard as that was, the really weird-looking prehistoric ponies that I learned about in school had to do that to survive before farming was even invented. Unfortunately, in those days, it didn't mean just hunting for fruit trees or carrots. Sometimes it meant literally hunting and killing animals to eat. While that may sound horrifying, ponies are capable of eating meat. In fact, those same prehistoric ponies in Miss Chalkwing's class actually hunted the species of really colorful bears to extinction. Now, you don't want to do that. If you're pretty sure that the animal you want to eat is rare or endangered, you really should leave it alone. It's in our best interest too, because you never know if an animal might have something very unique about them that could benefit us in the future. For instance, in Miss Chalkwing's biology class, we learned about a really cute lizard that produced a goo on its back that can help stop cancer. However, if you are desperate for food, and you're pretty sure the animal isn't endangered or it's attacking you, then it might be a good source of food. In those cases, you want to make sure to cook the meat very thoroughly over a fire to make sure any kind of weird diseases or anything it might have get fully cooked out of it. And try to use as much of the animal as possible. The skin could be used to make leather or fur armor to keep you warm, or things like that. You don't want it to have died in vain. Now, in both these cases of finding wild plants or animals, the most important thing to determine first is if the food is edible in the first place. Especially certain kinds of plants might look good to eat, but turn out to be poisonous. I'll cover that in another chapter. The quickest way to figure that out is if you see other ponies eating it. Unless, of course, they're eating it and not living much longer after that, then you might want to reconsider. But if you see that something is being gathered or hunted by others for food, then there's a good chance you might be able to as well. That is, of course, not including the creatures that can talk. Murdering and eating someone is not a good idea, as I explained in another chapter. It might take some time to figure out what other wastelanders around you are eating, so in the meantime, you'll want to look for one of the more dependable food sources in the wasteland: pre-war food. During the Great War, and especially after the mega spells were invented, every pony could see things were going to get really bad. So many companies started making food that wouldn't expire for a long time, that they could store in stables or other shelters. Because of this, you'll find a lot of packages of freeze-dried apples, or pears, or cereals, or snack cakes, or mac and cheese, or cheesy poofs, or canned beans, or noodles, or sparkle bombs. There's actually quite a bit of these pre-war preserved foods still lying around. A lot of grocery stores have been empty over the years, but many ponies hoarded food during the war. A good place to start would just be bombed out or abandoned houses. More often than not, you'll find a cellar or basement with some boxes of food. The same is also true about old wagons and offices, where stashes of food would be hidden in a false bottom of a wagon, or in some pony's desk, or in the break room of an office building. And just like any other problems you might encounter in the wasteland, it's always better to have a friend with you. Even if they're another mouth to feed, there's someone else to help find food for both of you. And not only that, but they can help you out so much more in the long run.